The diagnosis didn't break Zuri. Minjay's silence did. They were still in the consultation room when the doctor stepped out to print additional lab results. The door clicked shut. Minjay didn't reach for her hand. He didn't ask if she was okay. He stood, walked to the window. So that's it? He asked. Zuri folded her fingers together in her lap. It's manageable. At 42?
At 42?
She turned slowly. Yes, at 42. He exhaled sharply through his nose. Not grief, calculation. Natural conception will be difficult, she continued. But there are options. Difficult, he repeated. Correct. And stress makes it worse? Yes. He gave a humorless laugh.
My
entire company is built on stability projections.
I'm not one of your
She stared at him.
subsidiaries.
I'm not one of your subsidiaries. He didn't respond. The doctor returned, explained hormone therapy, explained monitoring cycles, explained probabilities without promising outcomes. Zuri listened. Minjay didn't. That night, the penthouse felt colder than usual. Zuri placed the medical file on the kitchen counter. We'll need to adjust expectations, she said calmly. But we can still build a family. Minjay poured himself a drink. I need clarity, he replied. You have it. No, I need certainty. She watched him carefully. Life doesn't offer certainty. My shareholders expect it. She almost smiled. Are you discussing earnings or children? He turned toward her slowly. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. I've been restructuring your offshore exposure for 6 years, she said evenly. I understand pressure. This is different. How? I need an heir. The word landed heavy. Why? She asked quietly. Because legacy matters. To who? To my father, to my board, to my investors. And to you? There was silence. That was the real answer. She stepped closer. We can try treatment. And if it fails? He stared at her for a long moment. Then something in his face hardened. You're 42, Zuri. Yes. And now you have a hormonal disorder. It's not a disorder, it's a condition. It's a liability. There it was. She felt the ground shift beneath her. I am your wife, she said softly. And I married you believing we would secure the future. Secure? She repeated. His voice dropped. Controlled. Final. No man plans his future around uncertainty. Her chest tightened. That's what I am to you? He held her gaze. You are not what I need anymore. Silence swallowed the room. She waited, because some part of her still hoped he would correct himself. He didn't. He set the glass down, and then he said it. Let's not pretend this doesn't change your value on the market. The cruelty was almost casual. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. I'm not a stock. In my world, everyone is. She studied him carefully. You think no one else would want me? He didn't blink. At this stage, with this complication? Be realistic. There was no shouting, no dramatic explosion, just a clean execution. 2 weeks later, divorce papers arrived. Efficient. Strategic. He moved fast. Removed her from advisory roles connected to Kang Biotech. Reassigned financial access. Left her with enough wealth to look generous, but quietly seeded a narrative. Zuri Davis was emotionally strained, medically unstable, not aligned with the company's future vision. She sat in her study reading the documents twice. Then she opened archived financial frameworks she had designed years ago. And she noticed something. Recent changes. Subtle, but sloppy. Minjay had begun shifting liquidity between Shell Health foundations too quickly. He was either hiding capital movement or protecting himself from something incoming. And without her oversight, the architecture was fragile. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Miss Davis." The voice was calm. "Male." "Yes. You've known me personally, but you've reviewed my transfers before." Her pulse slowed instead of racing. "And who would that be?" "Park Joon-Seok." She didn't react outwardly, but she knew the name. International logistics conglomerate. Aggressive expansion. Whispers of shadow networks beneath legitimate trade. You facilitated a liquidity bridge for Kang Biotech 5 years ago, through an intermediary fund tied to my freight division. So it was him. "You're well informed," she replied. "I prefer accuracy." A pause. "I heard about your separation." "People enjoy repetition," she said. "I prefer patterns." "And what pattern do you see?" "A company that just removed its most careful architect." She leaned back in her chair. "You overestimate me." "No," he said calmly. "Your ex-husband underestimated you." Silence. "I'm not interested in gossip," she said. "Neither am I." "Then what do you want?" "I'm restructuring international corridors. Legal on the surface, complicated underneath. I need someone who understands invisible risk." "You have analysts." "I need someone who sees 5 moves ahead." Direct. Not flirtatious. Not sympathetic. Strategic. "And why would I work for you?" "Because your professional reputation is about to be tested." She didn't speak. He continued. "He's positioning you as unstable, hormonal strain, emotional volatility." Her jaw tightened. "He's protecting his narrative." "He's protecting his ego," Joon-Seok corrected. Calmly. A pause. "I don't care about your marriage. I care about competence." "And what exactly are you offering?" "A clean battlefield." That caught her attention. No pity. No legacy obsession. No fertility expectations. The air shifted slightly. "You assume I want children." "I assume nothing," he replied. "But I know men like him equate biology with worth." Silence stretched between them. "I don't," he added. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't romantic. It was factual. "You're 42, he continued, "which means you've survived more than most executives twice your age." Her fingers tightened slightly around the phone. "I'm 33, he said, "which means I don't have time for ego." That was the first time her lips almost curved. "And what makes you think I would trust you?" "I don't," he replied smoothly. "Trust is inefficient at the beginning." That surprised her. "What do you suggest instead?" "Mutual benefit." "And if I decline?" "Then you'll spend the next year defending yourself instead of building something new." Direct. Unapologetic. Clean. She stared at the city skyline through the window. For the first time since the diagnosis, she didn't feel discarded. She felt observed. Accurately. "Send the proposal." A beat of silence. Then, "I will." The line disconnected. Zuri lowered the phone slowly. Minjay believed her value had decreased. But somewhere in the same city, a younger man had just evaluated her differently. Not as a wife. Not as a body. Not as a timeline. As leverage. And leverage, she understood very well. 3 weeks after the phone call, Zuri walked into Park Joon-Seok's headquarters. It did not look like a criminal empire. Glass, steel, precision. The company name on the building read Hanul Global Freight. Legitimate, publicly traded, expanding across Asia and Europe. She was escorted to the top floor without delay. No waiting. No intimidation tactics. When the doors opened, he was already standing there. No entourage, no theatrics. "Miss Davis," he said calmly. "Mr. Park." Up close, he looked younger than his reputation. 33. Sharp lines, controlled posture, eyes that assessed instead of admired. He gestured toward the conference table. "You reviewed the proposal?" "I did." "And?" "You're exposed in Eastern Europe," she said immediately. A flicker of approval passed through his expression. "Yes." "You've layered too many subsidiaries too quickly. If regulators align, you'll trigger simultaneous audits." "That won't happen." "Confident." "Prepared," he corrected. She placed her tablet on the table and rotated it toward him. "You rely heavily on centralized liquidity pools. That's efficient during growth, dangerous during scrutiny." He leaned forward slightly. "Continue." "If one corridor freezes, the rest tighten. You need separation architecture, invisible buffers." He studied her, not the screen. "You see collapse points quickly." "I built them for someone else." "And he removed you?" "Yes." There was silence between them. "And what would you build differently for me?" She held his gaze. "Independence layers. You will never be dependent on one source of survival." His jaw tightened slightly. That wasn't just business advice. It was personal philosophy. "Are you offering me loyalty?" he asked. "No," she replied calmly. "I'm offering stability." He didn't smile, but something shifted. "Most people are intimidated when they walk in here," he said. "Most people don't understand balance sheets." He looked her in silence. Then, "You're aware of the age difference," he said evenly. She blinked once. "Yes." "Does it concern you?" "Professionally?" she asked. "Personally," he clarified. That surprised her. "You're assuming there's a personal element." "I assume nothing," he said, "but rumors grow fast." She leaned back slightly. "I'm 42, you're 33. I've been married, you haven't." "That's correct." "If gossip is your concern, hire someone else." "It's not," he replied. "I don't care about gossip." "Then why mention it?" "Because I don't operate in illusions." Direct. Unapologetic. She studied him more carefully now. "You're young," she said. "And?" "You're very intentional." That's not an answer. She almost smiled. "You're not intimidated by me," she observed. "No." "Why?" "Because competence doesn't threaten me." That landed. She hadn't realized how long it had been since a man said something like that without insecurity beneath it. He stood, walked toward the window. "You know Kang Biotech is being quietly reviewed," he said. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "For what?" "Misaligned charitable transfers." She felt it immediately. The sloppy liquidity shifts. "I warned him," she murmured. "You're not surprised?" "No." He accelerated movement after the divorce. Her silence confirmed it. "He thinks separating from you separates him from risk." She looked at him sharply. "Is that why you approached me?" "Partially." "Honest." "What's the other reason?" He turned to face her fully. "You negotiate under pressure without panic." "And that matters to you?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because my world doesn't reward emotion." There it was again. Not cold, just structured. "And you believe mine does?" she asked quietly. He studied her. "You think your ex-husband mistook emotional endurance for weakness." "And you don't?" "No." Silence stretched. The tension between them wasn't romantic. It was intellectual, strategic. Two people measuring impact. Across the city, Kang Minjay was not calm. His CFO stood across from his desk, voice tight. "We've received notice of preliminary inquiries." "From who?" "Regulatory compliance units, 2 regions." "That's routine." "Not simultaneously." Minjay's jaw tightened. "How contained?" "Not fully." He stood abruptly. "Reallocate reserves." We already shifted capital last quarter. Then shift again. That could raise flags. He stared at his CFO. Do it. As the man left, Minjay's thoughts sharpened. The timing was too precise, too aligned. He reached for his phone, dialed a board member. Has anyone spoken to Zuri? He asked immediately. A pause on the other end. Why would we? She has access to historical frameworks. You removed her. Yes. So why would she care? He ended the call without answering. Because somewhere deep down, he knew exactly why she would care. Back at Hanul Global Freight, Zuri finished outlining restructuring phases. Phase 1 isolates corridor risk, she explained. Phase 2 decentralizes liquidity. And Phase 3? You become untouchable. He watched her carefully. And Kong? She didn't hesitate. He becomes fragile. Silence. You don't sound angry, he observed. I'm not. You don't sound hurt. I was, she replied evenly. Now I'm focused. There was a long pause. Then, do you want revenge? He asked her carefully. No. What do you want? She considered that carefully. Correction. His jaw tightened slightly. That wasn't just business advice. It was personal philosophy. Are you offering me loyalty? He asked. No, she replied calmly. I'm offering stability. He didn't smile, but something shifted. There was a long pause. Then, when can we start? Tomorrow. That soon. Time is money, Mr. Park. His jaw relaxed slightly. Indeed. Miss Davis? Welcome to Hanul Global Freight. She didn't smile, but something inside her settled. For the first time since the diagnosis, she wasn't defending herself. She was building again. And across the city, the man who discarded her had no idea. The replacement variable in his equation was now working against him. The first rumor appeared on a finance blog. It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. Former Kang Biotech strategist reportedly consulting for rival logistics conglomerate. No names. But insiders knew. By noon, 3 board members had called Minjay. Is it true? One asked. I don't deal in speculation, Minjay replied smoothly. But after he ended the call, he opened the article again. Hanul Global Freight. Park Joon-Seok, 33. Expanding aggressively. And now, Zuri. His jaw tightened. She moved faster than he expected. At Hanul headquarters, Zuri read the same article. Does this bother you? Joon-Seok asked. No. Why? Because it's imprecise. He almost smiled. You dislike inaccuracies. I dislike narratives I didn't design. He leaned back in his chair. You could deny it publicly. And validate it? She replied. No. Silence. You're calm, he observed. I've been publicly humiliated before, she said evenly. This is mild. His gaze sharpened slightly. He didn't press. Instead, he slid a folder toward her. Phase 1 is complete. She opened it. Eastern European corridor successfully separated. Liquidity decentralized. Risk diluted. You move quickly, she said. I move decisively. Your ex-husband doesn't. That caught her attention. You're monitoring him. I monitor everything that intersects with me. And he intersects with you? He will. There was no arrogance in it, just inevitability. That evening, Minjay requested a meeting, not through lawyers, directly. Zuri agreed. Neutral location, private members' lounge. When she entered, he was already seated. Impeccable as always. Perfect suit, perfect posture, perfect control. He stood when she approached. Zuri. Minjay. They sat. No small talk. "You're working with Park Joon-Seok," he said. "Yes. That's reckless." "Why?" "He's not clean." "No one at your level is clean," she replied calmly. His jaw tightened. "You're aligning yourself with volatility. I'm aligning myself with structure. He's using you." She tilted her head slightly. "And you didn't?" There was silence. "That's different," he said. "How?" "I gave you status." She almost laughed. "I gave you insulation," she corrected. His eyes sharpened. "What does that mean?" "It means the frameworks currently stabilizing your company were built by me." The words landed slowly. "You're threatening me?" he asked quietly. "No." She folded her hands on the table. "I'm explaining cause and effect. You think I can't survive without you. I think you're about to find out." He leaned forward. "You're being emotional. I'm being accurate." A pause. "You're 42, he said again, as if repetition could restore power. "Do you really believe this is wise, associating yourself with a younger man known for risk?" Her gaze hardened. "You're the only person who has ever reduced me to my age." Silence. "You're angry," he said. "I'm precise." He studied her carefully. "Is this revenge?" "No." "Then what?" She met his eyes evenly. "You miscalculated my value." A flicker of something passed through his face. Uncertainty. For the first time. Across town, Joon-Seok received word of the meeting. He didn't interrupt it. He didn't send security. He didn't react. Instead, he reviewed Kang Biotech's latest filings, and he saw it. Emergency reserve transfers, short-term capital shuffling, desperation masked as strategy. He picked up his phone. "Accelerate acquisition preparation," he said calmly. "For which division?" his advisor asked. "All vulnerable ones." "That will trigger defensive maneuvers." "I'm counting on it." He ended the call. Then he waited. 2 weeks later, it happened. A regulatory freeze hit one of Kang Biotech's subsidiary foundations. Temporary, but public. Stock dipped 4% in a single day. Board members panicked. Investors whispered. Minjay called an emergency session. "Stabilize projections," he ordered. "We need liquidity reinforcement," his CFO said. "From where?" There was silence. The old buffers Zuri had built were no longer synchronized. He felt it now, the structural weakness. And for the first time, doubt crept in. Not about the company, about her. Meanwhile, at Hanul Global Freight, Zuri watched the market reactions without expression. "You predicted the freeze window within 2 weeks," Joon-Seok said. "Yes." "Why didn't you warn him?" She didn't look away from the screen. "He doesn't take warnings from women." There was silence. "You don't sound bitter," he observed. "I'm not." "Then what are you?" "Finished." Silence settled between them. He studied her more carefully now. Not as an asset, not as leverage, as a human who had recalibrated. "You don't miss him," he said quietly. She finally looked at him directly. "I miss who I thought he was." That answer lingered, and something shifted in the room. Not romantic, but human. He stepped closer to the table. "You're not a replacement variable." Her brow lifted slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means you're not here because he discarded you." She held his gaze. "I'm here because I chose correction." He nodded once. "Good." Then his voice lowered slightly. They'll start talking soon. About who? Us. She didn't react. There is no us, she said evenly. Public perception doesn't require consent. True. Does it concern you? No. Why? Because I don't build decisions around gossip. She studied him carefully. And personally? His gaze didn't waver. I don't see age, he said calmly. I see alignment. The words weren't flirtatious. They were deliberate. And for the first time since everything began, her composure shifted just slightly. Not weakness, not vulnerability. Awareness. Outside, Kang Biotech's stock dipped again. Inside, Hanel Global's acquisition teams prepared silent offers. Minjay had removed the architect of his empire, and now the architect was redesigning the battlefield. The offer didn't come loudly. It came quietly, through a private investment vehicle. Minority stake, strategic, legal, dangerous. Kang Biotech's board received the notification on a Monday morning. By noon, Minjay had the file in front of him. He read it once, then again. Hanel Strategic Holdings, parent structure tied to Hanel Global Freight, indirect control, but growing. He looked up at his legal team. How much? 8%, his attorney replied carefully, accumulated over the last 10 days. 10 days? His voice sharpened. Yes. That meant it started before the regulatory freeze, before the stock dip, before the panic. It was planned. His jaw tightened. Who authorized the share release? Open market acquisition, fully compliant. He didn't need to ask the real question. He already knew. Zuri. At Hanel Global, Zuri stood in the conference room reviewing final documents. You moved faster than projected, she said calmly. Joon-Seok adjusted his cuff. Opportunity windows close quickly. You anticipated the dip. Yes. And if the board retaliates, they will. And he looked at her steadily. I'm prepared. She studied him carefully. You're escalating. Yes. Why? Because hesitation invites counterattack. Is this about profit? She asked. It's about positioning. There was a pause. And him? He didn't pretend not to understand. He's a variable, Joon-Seok said, not the objective. That answer mattered more than she expected. 2 days later, the financial press exploded. Kang Biotech targeted by rising logistics conglomerate. Speculation, market analysis, whispers. Then came the personal angle. Former executive spouse, now strategist for acquiring firm. Her name was no longer hidden. Zuri Davis, 42, divorced, now aligned with a younger billionaire. The comment sections were brutal. Gold digger, midlife crisis, rebound narrative. She read none of it, but Minjay did. Every word. His phone vibrated constantly. Board members demanding reassurance, investors questioning leadership. Then he saw the headline that pierced his composure. Did Kang Biotech lose its real architect? He stood abruptly. Schedule a press conference, he ordered. Zuri found out through a notification. He's going public, she said calmly. Joon-Seok didn't look surprised. He'll frame you as emotional, he said. I expected that. Are you prepared? Yes. How? She closed her tablet. I won't respond. He watched her carefully. Silence can be interpreted as weakness, only by insecure men. That almost made him smile. The press conference was calculated. Minjay stood behind the podium, composed as ever. Kang Biotech remains strong, he said. Recent acquisitions are routine market dynamics. A reporter raised her hand. Is it true your former wife is leading the strategy behind Hanel's position? A flicker, small but visible. My former spouse is not affiliated with Kang Biotech. Her current decisions reflect personal choices. Another reporter leaned forward. Do you believe this acquisition is retaliatory? He paused just long enough. I believe emotional decisions rarely produce stable outcomes. It was subtle, but clear. He was painting her as unstable. Again. At Hanel headquarters, the clip played on a large screen. The room was silent. Zuri didn't move. He's baiting you, Joon-Seok said quietly. Yes. Will you respond? No. Why? Because I don't fight in public. She turned the screen off. He's afraid, she added. How do you know? He's repeating the same narrative. And it's outdated. Joon-Seok stepped closer, not invading, but near enough to feel the shift in air. You're not angry, he observed. She looked at him. I was, she admitted softly, when he said no one would choose me. Silence lingered. But now, he asked. Now I realize he was describing himself. That answer stayed between them, unpolished, honest. For a moment, the professional lines blurred. Not dramatically, not recklessly, just slightly. You don't owe him silence, Joon-Seok said. I'm not protecting him. Then who are you protecting? She met his gaze. My dignity. A long pause. Then he nodded once. Good. That evening, Minjay requested a private meeting again. This time, urgency in his voice. Zuri agreed. Same neutral location, but the energy had changed. When she entered, he looked tired, still polished, but strained. You're destabilizing the company, he said immediately. I'm acquiring shares, Zuri corrected, legally. You're hiding behind him. I'm standing beside him. That hit. You think he respects you? Minjay asked sharply. Yes. Because you're useful. Yes. His jaw tightened. You're being manipulated. No, she said evenly. I'm being valued. There was silence. He stared at her longer than before. You've changed, he said quietly. No, you're just seeing me without control. That landed. Hard. He stepped closer. You think he'll choose you long term? There it was, the insecurity. She held his gaze. He already did. Minjay's composure cracked for a fraction of a second. He's younger, he said. This is novelty. Then why are you threatened? She asked calmly. Silence. For the first time since the divorce, he had no immediate answer. She stepped back. You reduced me to fertility and age, she said quietly. He reduces me to competence. The difference hung heavy in the room. And that's enough, she added. She turned to leave. Zuri. She paused, but didn't face him. You're making a mistake. She answered without looking back. No. You did. Later that evening, back at Hanul, Joon-Seok stood by the window. You met him, he said when she entered. Yes. And? She's unraveling. And you? She hesitated. Then, I'm free. He turned slowly. The words shifted something between them. Not business, not strategy. Freedom. He stepped closer. You don't have to fight alone anymore, he said quietly. She studied him carefully. I'm not fighting, she replied. Good girl, he said. A breath passed between them. Close, measured, intentional. Outside, Kang Biotech's stock dropped another 2%. Inside, the acquisition team prepared the next move. The war wasn't loud, it wasn't explosive, it was surgical. And Zuri Davis, 42, discarded, devalued, was no longer defending her worth. She was redefining it. The boardroom was tense. Kang Minjay stood at the head of the table, calm on the surface, but frayed at the edges. 8%. It didn't sound like much, until the board started asking questions. Sir, the Hanul stake has grown quietly, one director said. Liquidity shifts suggest influence over strategic decisions. Minjay's hand tightened around his pen. "We're diversifying," he said smoothly. "Nothing to worry about." A younger board member leaned forward. "Diversifying or losing control, because the market isn't buying it." The words landed like a hammer. Minjay's composure flickered. Across the city, Zuri sat in Hanul's war room, surrounded by Joon-Seok and her small team. "Phase 2 is ready," she said. "We initiate majority influence if the board splits." Joon-Seok raised an eyebrow. "Are you certain?" "Yes," she replied firmly. "I've predicted every move. The freeze, the share spike, the public narrative, they all align." He studied her for a long moment. "You've anticipated him at every turn." "I've anticipated what he believes about me," she said evenly. "Not just him, but everyone who underestimates me." For the first time since the divorce, she felt the thrill of being fully in control. The decisive day arrived. Hanul submitted the formal acquisition notice. Minority shares became majority influence overnight. The press didn't understand the nuance. They reported a hostile maneuver. Minjay received the report in his office. He slammed the report on the desk. "Impossible," he muttered. The board called an emergency vote. Several directors turned quietly to Zuri's influence. They saw stability, competence, planning, not ego. By the end of the day, the vote was unanimous. Minjay had lost operational control. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the skyline, feeling the weight of an empire unraveling beneath him. That evening, Zuri agreed to meet Minjay one last time, neutral location, no lawyers, no games, just the remnants of their past. When she entered, he was already standing. "Zuri," he said, his voice quieter than she remembered. "Minjay," she replied evenly. Silence stretched. "You did this," he said finally. "I acted," she corrected. "You removed me from your equations. I corrected it." You humiliated me," he said. She studied him carefully. "You reduced me to age and fertility. You undervalued strategy and intelligence. I restored what you ignored." He swallowed, not angry, not sharp, vulnerable, fractured. "And Park Joon-Seok," he said cautiously. "He supported you?" "Yes," she said. "He valued my abilities, nothing else." Minjay looked away, jaw tight. "You've grown beyond me," he admitted softly. "I always was," she said. "You just chose not to see it." The words hung between them, not cruel, not dramatic, honest. Later, in a quieter space, Joon-Seok met her at Hanul headquarters. "You did it," he said. "Yes," she replied. "And him?" "He finally understands what he lost." Joon-Seok stepped closer. "And you?" "I understood what I gained," she said, voice softer than before. "Not just professionally, mentally, emotionally." He nodded. "Good. Don't read more into it," she added. "This isn't about replacing anything. It's about defining what's ours." He smiled faintly, a controlled, private expression. "Then let's proceed. Together." The words weren't rushed, not impulsive, but deliberate. She looked at him, 33, calculated, intelligent, respectful, and realized she no longer needed anyone to validate her. But she could choose to work alongside someone equally formidable. 2 months later, at a public Hanul global announcement, Zuri and Joon-Seok stood side by side. Minjay watched from a distance. The media captured smiles, not flamboyant, not romantic, not scandalous. Professional unity, power, respect. Some whispered about the age gap, others about the divorce. But Zuri didn't care. Because she was no longer defined by what men said she could or couldn't be. She had restored her dignity, her career, her choices. And for the first time, she realized that the fear of being unwanted was irrelevant all along, because the right people had already recognized her value. That night, in the quiet of Hanul's top floor, Joon-Seok finally allowed a moment of personal honesty. "You've been underestimated all your life," he said. "I've managed. You're exceptional, and you don't need me to tell you that." "I know," she said softly. There was silence between them. "And yet, I want to be here," he admitted. She studied him, not as a rescue, not as a replacement, but as a partner in strategy, intellect, and choice. "You are," she said simply. No fireworks, no dramatic confession, just acknowledgement. And that was enough. The city lights shimmered below. Minjay's empire was weakened, her reputation restored, and Zuri Davis, 42, experienced, brilliant, was fully, unapologetically herself. If Zuri's story taught you anything, it's this. Your value isn't determined by anyone else, and it's never too late to reclaim your power. Comment below, have you ever been underestimated and proven the world wrong? And don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more stories where courage, intelligence, and resilience change everything.